goes around the world with renewable energy projects, with Korea, the United States, in Hawaii anyway, 2 Portuguese projects, and Canada in the province of Quebec. And we're talking about three projects related to wind, 1 to solar, and 1 truly unconventional renewable source, which is seawater temperature. Natalie Major represents Hydro-Quebec. She's been involved in transmission line projects for many years and is involved with integrating 12 out of the 15 wind projects that will be operational in the province of Quebec in the year 2015. And she's going to talk about the integration of those 12 wind farm projects.
Boa tarde. Good afternoon. The purpose of my talk today is to present the integration of wind farm generation in Quebec. Quebec is the French part of Canada, so you understand why my English isn't perfect. I will first explain why and how we are developing wind energy in Quebec. And then I will present the work we have done up to now and the challenge for the integration of wind farms. And I will finish with our approach in promoting the social acceptability of our projects. To start, let me say a few words about my company, Hydro-Québec. In Quebec, the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity are led by Hydro-Québec. Its sole shareholder is the Quebec government. Hydro-Québec has some 4 million customers in Quebec, spread over a territory of 1.7 million square kilometers. The company operates an extensive transmission systems which comprises more than 33,000 kilometers of lines. Hydro-Québec is one of the biggest electric utilities in North America, with a total installed capacity over 36,000 megawatts. It is also the world's largest hydroelectric producer, with 60 hydroelectric power stations, which produce nearly 35,000 megawatts. Therefore, 95% of the electricity produced by Hydro-Québec is coming from renewable energy. So, Quebec has an interest in developing wind energy for 3 reasons. Because the size of its territory, Quebec's wind generation potential is enormous. The transmission system extensive coverage makes it possible to integrate wind energy even from remote areas. And wind power and hydropower are complementary to each other. Hydroelectricity is a natural complement to wind power since hydro reservoirs and power stations can compensate for the intermittent source nature of wind generation. In return, the use of wind turbines ensures that water levels remain high in reservoirs and can be used to generate electricity at a later date. Now, let's talk about the development of wind energy in Quebec. The first wind farm project was built in 1998, and until 2002, Hydro-Québec signed supply contracts with private promoters under private agreements for the purchase of nearly 500 megawatts. However, for future development in the wind energy field, the government of Quebec has decided that Hydro-Québec will buy its energy from independent producers and will proceed with the bid-based process to support the emergence of a strong wind energy industry in Quebec. This practice allows the utility to impose regional content requirements and is most competitive. In 2003, Hydro-Québec launched its first calls for tenders for the acquisition of 1,000 megawatts of wind-generated power from independent producers. In the context of this tender, all the wind farms should be located in the region of Quebec, the Gaspésie, to promote the economic implement the establishment of manufacturing plant blades, towers, and nacelle assembly in this region. Following the bidding process, 7 wind farms were selected. Currently, all these projects have been commissioned. In 2005, Hydro-Québec announced a second call for tenders for 2,000 megawatts of wind energy. The second tender calls covered all the regions of Quebec, and 15 wind farms were selected. Presently, 10 of these projects are underway. Hydro-Québec launched another invitation to tender for an additional 5,000 megawatts in 2009 for wind farms not exceeding 25 megawatts. So, wind energy is expected to constitute 4,000 megawatts by 2015, or 10% of Quebec's total installed power capacity. The goal is an ambitious one, but can be achieved thanks to the Hydro-Québec's ability to incorporate this new energy source. This brings me to the second part of my presentation. Integrating intermittent wind power into a large, primarily hydroelectric generating fleet presents a real challenge. To ensure safe, reliable transmissions of electricity supplied by various wind farms in Quebec, Hydro-Québec has undertaken a great deal of work representing approximately $2.2 billion. Here is an example of the work required to integrate the 7 wind farms in the first call for tenders. Integration of these wind farms involved major changes to the network so that the Gaspésie region, which was a consumer of energy, becomes an energy producing region. A large variety of work was required, such as strengthening the existing network, adding equipment in 18 substations, adding automatism and protection in the telecommunication network, and the construction of lines to connect each wind farm to the network. The signing of the contracts with the promoters took place in 2005, and in 2006 the first wind farm project was put into operation. Gradually, the other wind farms projects were put into operation until 2011. So, the challenge was to coordinate these works and implement them within a very tight schedule. To deliver the output from the wind farms in the northern part of the Gaspésie Peninsula to the main network, we had to build a 62-kilometer line, a 106-kilometer line, and modify an existing line of 108 kilometers. In the case of the 62-kilometer line, the route had to pass through entirely private lands into 8 municipalities. This led us to consult more than 300 owners, and we had a lot of communication before to select the best route. We took into account the request of stakeholders to go along existing line and limit the impacts on agricultural crops. We limited the impacts by locating towers carefully with the landowners to avoid interfering with their activities. For example, we located towers, new towers parallel to existing towers, and installed towers occupying little ground space. In the case of the 106-kilometer line, the major issues for stakeholders were the protection of the coastal landscapes and the private land. So, we allocated the route far from coastal landscape, mainly in public land, but in mountainous region. But we had a great challenge, technical challenge, because we have to cross long valleys and pass through frost zone. We also had to build individual lines to connect each wind each of the other wind farms to the network. I tell you about one of these projects, the Carleton Wind Farm line, in a few minutes. Until now, I've been working on 12 wind farms projects. Some of these projects are located in populated area and initially were very badly received. But finally, all the projects have been accepted by the community. I would like to introduce you how we work to ensure the social acceptability of our project. Our communication approach is based on participation and taking account of the concern expressed by the communities, including the landowners affected. For this purpose, we always carry out at least 3 communication steps, and we distribute brochure to all stakeholders with all the information about the project. During the first step of communication, the general information, we announce the project. We present the technical characteristics and the study area, as well as environmental and technical studies that we will conduct. The second stage of communication, the information consultation, is to present the results of environmental and technical studies carried out in the study area and the routes proposed for the line. These steps allow us to collect the community's concern regarding the project and take them into account when selecting the route and preparing the mitigation measure. After receiving and analyzing public opinion, we do a third step of communication, the information decision, in which we select the best route and change it if necessary to reflect community concerns. During these communications, we make sure to properly gather public concerns by a question period at the end of the presentation, by being available when the presentation is complete for individual questions, by leaving cheap response in order to know the concerns and opinion about the most suitable route, to transmit by mail or email, and leaving the details of a contact person, and finally, by leaving the phone number of an info project line. We use various means to make sure that everybody understands the project, understands how we work to find a route for the line, and to make sure that everybody can help select the best route. We use visual simulation, maps with detailed inventories of natural and human environments, and map with inventories of landscape and multimedia presentation. Here is an example of a project that we did to connect a wind farm located on the mountain into the transmission grid located in a populated area. We presented the environmental, technical, and economical main criteria that we considered in planning where to run a line, such as avoid areas most environmentally sensitive, avoid areas more difficult technically, search routes as short as possible, limit the impact on the landscape. We presented the most environmentally sensitive areas in the study area, those that are to be avoided with the line drawing, such as containment area 40, maple syrup operation, and those that have a potential for exploitation, the populated areas, cultivated land and protected agricultural land, and the valued landscape. We presented also the areas more difficult to cross technically, for example, areas at risk of frost. Then we presented the line route that we consider technically, economically, and environmentally acceptable. In this case, we presented 2 routes, the east route and the west route. And we presented a comparison of this route. We selected the route that most stakeholders said they prefer. This route was more difficult technically with ice loading area and more expensive, but better to limit the impacts on valued landscape. To conclude, Hydro-Québec has a well-established culture of sustainability and promotes sustainable development with the choice of a clean, renewable energy. The actions of the company are based on the 3 pillars of sustainable development. Each project taken on by Hydro-Québec must be profitable, environmentally acceptable, and favorably received by the communities. Thank you. Obrigada.
Thank you. If we have time at the end, we will have questions for all the presenters. Next is Sang-Dun Lee, who represents the Government Research Institute in Korea, to talk about strategic environmental assessment.
Thank you for coming to my presentation. I'm from Korea, and I'm working at the Korea Environmental Institute. There is government-funded research institute, and it's also official EIA review organization in Korea. And today, my presentation topic is strategic environmental assessment of wind power plant in Korea. In fact, my presentation mainly about the GIS analysis of SEA. First, I will talk about the renewable energy in Korea, then wind power plant. Then I will show you some details of GIS analysis and conclusion. I can put the situation of renewable energy in Korea in this way: urgent need, limited resources, and high social profits. Like other countries, Korea depends highly on fossil fuels, and it needs to meet the RPS goal in near future. So Korea government tried to build solar, wind, and tidal power plant, but there are some restrictions to develop renewable energy in Korea. First of all, there is not many land. So in Korea, there is very limited land to construct wind solar power plant. Second of all, Korea has very high population density, so it is very difficult to find a site with little impact on residential area. So in every development project, there will be a significant social conflict with local residents and NGOs. Renewable energy in Korea increasingly rapid since around the year 2000, and wind power plants takes high proportion in renewable energy. Compared to Europe, North America, and the rest of Asian countries, the production of wind power plant is relatively small in Korea. So, and in Korea, there is some controversies related to the renewable energies. Is it really environmental friendly, or does it result in environmental degradations? I'll show you some 2 typical cases in controversial cases in Korea. And in Korea, some solar power plants are planted on a forest, like this area, because of the cheap land price, and the solar power plant developer want to have government aid. The second case is about the tidal power plant. This is the site where the Korea Electric Company tried to build a tidal power plant. So as you can see in here, if you build a tidal power plant, the enormous area, the tidal mud plant, will be destroyed. So the local people who live on this area and some environmental NGOs object to this development plan. So this is 2 typical controversial cases of renewable energy development in Korea. In the wind power plant in Korea, there are many, not so many, but many plants, but with little capacity. Most of wind power plants in Korea are constructed mainly on mountain-rich area. And currently, there is no offshore wind power plant in Korea, but we will start to build one in year 2012. So, as the wind power plant is constructed on a mountain ridge and very close to residential area, there is some huge significant social conflict. This is the proposed site for the offshore wind power plant. And this image shows you the some locations of wind power plant. And so you can see most of the wind power plant is located on the mountainous area with either capacity to produce electricity. Wind power plant in Korea increased rapidly since year 2004, and it takes almost 24% of total renewable energy generation in year 2009. This is one the controversial case. As you know, the most Korean people worried about the environmental effects of wind power plant: noise, shadow flickering, light reflectance, scenic view impact. So local residents are strongly against the construction of wind power plant. In this case, they try to build 24 wind turbines along this mountain ridge area. In this case, 10 generators, 10 turbines of total 24 wind power plants are located in State Park. And the local residents, again, are strongly against this plan. So currently the construction plan is suspended, not totally withdrawn. So it's ongoing project. This is the wind power plant. It's currently operating. This is the typical mountain wind power plant in Korea. This power plant have 22 megawatts wind turbines, and this power plant is stretched over 5 kilometers along mountain ridge area. This is the aerial photograph of this power plant. It starts here and here. The wind turbines located on the mountain ridge, mountain tops. This is a before image. You can see the landscape of the mountains. And this one is typical Korean mountain image. This one too. This one you can see the landscape effect. This is before, this one is after. So I take this picture from the residential area. So it's clear landscape impact by the wind power plant. So this one is the before image, heavily forested mountain top area. Then after wind power plant is constructed, you can see the significant ecological and wet form degradation on the mountain top. This one is before image. You can see the mountain ridge. This is another image, and this one is after wind power plant construction. So I will talk about the GIS analysis of wind power plant, GIS, SEA. In Korea, most wind power plant is constructed and planned on high elevation mountain ridge area. So for the wind power SEA, we need to assess the site stability of wind power plant and the environmental status at national and regional scale. So I do this GIS analysis by overlaying the wind map layer on environmental GIS data, right? Ecologically protected area and the major mountain ridges to assess the environmental condition of the wind power candidate sites. Then the result of this analysis will provide the GIS data, basic GIS data, wind power candidate sites, and its environmental condition for the wind power SE. I use these 4 different GIS data: national wind map, natural green next index, and ecologically protected area mountain ridge map, and digital elevation model. Natural Greenness Index is the government generated by Korean Ministry of Environment, and this NGI map is composed of 3 degrees. NGI first degree is well-preserved old growth forest, so it must be protected. NGI second degree is forested, but not that well-preserved. Degree 3 is developed area. And the protected area is like a national park, a state park, ecologically preservation area, wetlands. So this one is contains that kind of information. And you might be curious about this mountain ridge map. Mountain ridge, why is it so important in Korea? It's more about the Korean cultural heritage. Korean people traditionally give so much meanings to mountains and mountain ridges. So we strongly don't want to cut the mountain ridge continuity. So this one has a significant meanings in IAIA process in Korea. So the GIS analysis is just a simple overlay analysis, and at local government level, I can access the total capacity of wind power development without a major ecological or ethical degradations. So I suggest simple SEA methodology to compromise between environmental protection and wind power development. So this is the elevation map of South Korea. This is NGI Natural Greenness Index map and ecologically protected national park and state park after. This is Natural Greenness Index first degree area. This is major NGI 1 degree and protected area overlaid on the major mountain ranges. And this is wind map of South Korea. The darker color represents the high wind speed area. And wind maps, so as you can see, the darker images significantly highly overlapped with high wind speed area. This is the flowchart of GIS analysis. 4 different GIS layers are overlaid to identify environmentally sensitive area in wind power candidate sites. Then gather some GIS data of wind power SEA and local government level. So this is wind map, and this is the percentage of wind speed categories. And wind speed larger than 6 meters per second is considered as the minimum requirement for commercial wind power plants. So I just show you the wind speed and the area with wind speed higher than 6 meters per second. The percentage is just about 20% of South Korea. Most of the wind power plant candidate sites are concentrated in 3 provinces: Gangwon, Gyeongnam, Gyeonggi. So there is some significant discrepancy among provinces. This is the overlay analysis results of environmentally protected area and wind power candidate sites. This is environmentally protected area, and this is the overlaid map of wind power candidate sites and environmentally protected area. You can see that most of the wind power candidate sites are overlapped with environmentally protected area. And this is another concentrations in 3 provinces. We categorize mountain ridges into 4 different categories: ridge level 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 and 2 is the most significant categories. Level 1 is like a backbone of South Korean Peninsula. Level 2 is mountain ridge defines the major watershed. Level 3 is a mountain ridge stretched over 100 kilometers. Level 4 is stretched over 300 kilometers. So I differentiate the affected area. And this is the result. So once again, the wind power plants candidate sites are significantly overlapped with this level 1 and this level 2. This level 1 and this level 2. So in South Korea, if you try to build or construct a wind power plant, it is unavoidable to significantly degrade the rainfall and protected area. And this is under high elevation areas analysis. About 30% of major mountain ranges is higher than 500 meters. So this is the final result. 48% of wind power candidate sites is environmentally sensitive area. So I can tell that most of the wind power candidate sites is worth to preserve. Yeah, I will summarize this. This is the result. So inland wind power candidate sites are located on environmentally sensitive area, and you need to be aware of the significant landscape impact around the national park. And in Korea, this is key point. To install just 20 wind turbines requires new road construction more than 5 kilometers, and it is very difficult to construct a massive wind power plant in South Korea. So this is the conclusion. We need to have a long-term monitoring of inland wind power plant, and inland more detailed wind power SCA process. And finally, rather than try to develop inland wind power plant in Korea, we need to develop offshore wind power plant. Thank you for your
If you will introduce yourself and we'll save time. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon. My background is my company. It's a consultancy company that works in ecological matters. And I'm going to talk about the development of compensation measures that were implemented at the solar power station in Malaysia, which is southeast of Portugal, very close to the Spanish border. This solar power station occupies the total area. That occupies about 280 hectares, and it's almost entirely inside a special protection area. For those that are not familiar with this classification, European classification, it's an area which was classified within the frame of the Habitats Directive and the Birds Directive, and implies a certain amount of conservation within its limits. I'll go in further detail further on. This project was object of impact assessment, during which we found inside, well, not totally inside, but within the area where the power plant would be installed, there were 3 to 4 pairs of stone curlew, which is a small, well, actually it's medium-sized wader that lives in steppe-like habitats. And the pairs were using partially the area where the plant was installed. This species is classified as vulnerable in Portugal, but it's also included in Annex 1 of the Birds Directive of the EUC regulation. Because of these, and because of the disposal, the dispositions of the Habitats Directive, when at the end of the impact assessment, it was decided that the promoter would have to implement the compensation measures, for which the target was this species. That's the species, the way the species. And the target of the compensation measures was particularly this species, although other species and other habitats were benefiting from the measures. Some solar power stations look like this, and this is not really a very good bird habitat, as you can imagine. But our solar power station is quite different. It looks like this. This power station uses very big solar panels. So it's actually a collection of them in each place that rotate with the sun. And because of this massive size, the distance between each of these equipment is quite big. In one direction is the distance between the projection of the panels. It's 11 meters, and in the other direction is 17 meters. So this gives quite broad alleys where we can do other things than producing electricity. Because of these, it was accepted that the compensation measures were developed inside the terrain of the central. Initially, we discussed it with the national authorities, the possibility of doing the compensation measures outside the plant. But then, given this particular situation, ICN agreed to allow the implementation inside the limits, and after 3 years reassess the question and see what would have to be done after. The two main objectives of these compensation measures were to restore the stone curlew population to its initial level, which was 3 to 4 pairs, and make sure that at least 25% of the bird species, well, not exactly the bird species, but the species richness was still present after 3 years of the operating of the power station. Then there were a number of specific objectives that were defined. First, maintaining the existing vegetation of what was left after the construction, because some parts of these 280 hectares are not actually used, do not have what they call followers, the solar panels themselves, mainly because the soil is pure rock with scrub. Also maintained the whole of trees that were not affected by the construction. There was a small piece of, small bunch of trees that were saved by the construction. And then there was another objective, which was to promote the vegetation cover dominated by short grass, which is the favorable habitat for these target species, the stone curlew, to promote the diversified vegetation. And this would have to consider the need for very low vegetation within the whole area of the power station. Otherwise, anything that grows more than these can put shade on the solar panels, and then the efficiency and the production will be affected. And finally, to promote the installation of a population of resident races. We thought about rabbit, but then we also used in the meanwhile, we used sheep. First action was to sow the grasses, not in the whole area. The soils of the area where the power station is installed are quite different. The southern part of the area is the soils are very poor, very thin, and the northern part, the soils are better. So what we decided was to allow the vegetation to grow naturally in the northern part, where the soils were better, and to sow grasses on the lower part, on the southern part of the power station. In the area that was sown, there was grazing by sheep, not from the first year. The first autumn, we introduced the sheep. The other part was grazed almost from the beginning. And the grazing is done by a local farmer that has a herd of 500 sheep of a particularly breed, a local breed. It's the black breed, and it's a certified bunch of sheep. These are the animals. So in the northern part, they were allowed to stay most of the year, And these animals will move to the southern part when, and then during that period, the northern part was not raised at all. So both sides of the power station will raise the northern part more intensively, the southern part only for shorter periods, allowing for the vegetation to be kept fairly low, which is the habitat, well, the habitat need for the stone curlew. We also promote, in order to promote a diversified vegetation, initially that was the thing that was defined in the methodological protocol. We tried to sow with the seeds from local bushes in the area, particularly underneath the solar panels. But that didn't work very well because first the sheep were taking the small plants, we could not control that. And also discussing the thing with the promoter, we found out that it was not a very good idea to have sources of problems underneath the solar panels. So we decided to make enclosures where we planted the small bushes and trees away from any place that could shade and distributed throughout the power plant. And we also protected the natural regeneration of a wild pear that is native to this area. Another action was directed to the rabbit. We created mounds of earth and branches and bits of wood in order to create habitat for the rabbit, because the soil there is very hard. They do not have many places where to dig and make their breeding places. So we distributed these 21 places around the whole center of the whole power station. And initially we thought about including also water, but that provided, we couldn't do it because it was, operationally it was very complicated to do it with the promoter. So we decided to give up that, but with the plantation of the bushes as they are watered during the summer, we sort of solved this, and we tried to locate these mounds not very far from the places where we have the plantations, so they can access to the water that is used for the irrigation. And all around the power station there is also irrigation for lines of bushes that they can access. There was also a monitoring program that included the regular census of all birds, both breeding and wintering populations, and the breeding population, the census directed to the breeding population of stone curlew. We used point counts for the whole bird, for the general bird fauna, and for the stone curlew we developed a specific census that included the surveys at the end of the winter, beginning of the breeding season, surveys at dusk and night, and then a follow-up during the breeding season to find out the territories and the places that they were used. For the rabbit, we used indirect methods, counting latrines and droppings along with verifying line transects, and also verifying the occupancy of these earth mounds. Okay, as for the results, the sowing proved to be mostly positive, although two of the plant species we have used were not very efficient, because the sheep ate, they are digestible, and so the sheep ate the plants and the seed disappeared. But for most of the grasses we have used, the result was very good. The field is still very good, and the grass is growing naturally after it's already the fourth year. As for scrub, it's still quite early to know what's happening, because we started only in 2010, so the plants are very new. Most of them are alive. They were alive last week when I was there. And so we will have to wait for the results of these. What we know is that the rabbits are using these areas both for drinking and also for digging, because as the area is irrigated, the digging is much easier for that. As for the birds, what we found out is that 70% of the bird species that was still present in the last survey we had done in 2010-2011. And in spring, the species richness is about 94% of the species richness at the reference period. We also noticed that the species richness is slightly higher in the areas that are not subject to grazing during the spring, the southern area that was sown. And this difference was significant, statistically significant in 2011. The species that were most affected by the construction are the forest species, as you would expect, but also some open land, open grassland species, particularly those that do not tolerate the presence of trees and any obstacles within. So they need vast areas where to live. Others adapted very well. Some species have a very high density within the area of the power station. As for the stone curlew, we now have 3 to 5 pairs within the limits and the surrounding area of the power station. So we have achieved the target that we have defined. We have evidence that they are actually using the power station for feeding, and at least 1 or 2 pairs are actually breeding inside, they're nesting inside the power station. The picture that you have seen before with the eggs is within the limits of the power station. I'll just show you the evolution of the territories. The darker one is the reference period, and these black lines are the 2011. This is a nest inside. One of these, I think it's this one, is probably also nesting inside the limits of the power station. This is the southern area that was referring. This is the northern area which was never sown. And so there were some changes, but some of the pairs stayed more or less in the same area. This one is not. But overall, the population maintained its level. As for the rabbit, when we started, there were only rabbits all along the fence, particularly here and here. Now the population of rabbit is getting inside. These are, it's not very easy to see, these are the mounts that we put inside. And out of the 21 that we constructed, 20 are already occupied. In terms of numbers, it seems that also the population has increased, not only the distribution but the numbers. These are the results of the census of the trees. And this is it. We managed to get to the well, actually, in terms of numbers of bird species, we have done much better than we expected. Stone curlew population maintained its numbers. The rabbits are doing very well. We think we will keep the sheep so far as the population of rabbit increases, because the sheep maintain the grass in a very low level, which is good for the stone curlew. And we'll see how it goes for the next years. These are 2 pictures of the pond station, the sheep, and then meridional shrike, great shrike, using one of the power station's facilities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Ricardo Tomé. I'm from STRIX, it's an environmental consultancy from Portugal. And I came here today to present you the results of a best practice case study on the use of a mitigation procedure that involves shutting down turbines to avoid impacts caused by wind farms on birds. So basically I will very briefly go through what are the main impacts that wind farms can cause on birds, which are the main mitigation measures that have been used worldwide. And then I will focus on our case study with Barão de São João wind farm in southwest Portugal, go through the results and financial impacts of the applied mitigation procedures, and then I will conclude with some final remarks. So as probably most of you already know, wind farms may impact on birds at three different types of, they have three different types of impacts. One is habitat destruction or degradation. It occurs mostly during the construction phase. Then we have disturbance, for instance barrier effects, in which the birds are changing their common behavior patterns and movement patterns because of the existence of this barrier from the implemented wind turbines. And then we have death. Death is casualties due to mortality due to collision with the turbine blades or turbine towers. So the most important mitigation measure is to adequate planning and choose the site for installing a wind farm. It's already proven that this is the most important. This is very site-specific, the type of impacts that the wind farm has for the birds. So, because it depends on the topography, on weather, on local bird communities, so it's very much site-dependent. So it's the best approach is not to choose an important place for birds, of course. Then to reduce nocturnal lighting is also important because some birds are, especially nocturnal migrants, may be attracted by the lights of installed turbines, so they get killed by the blades. Painting turbine blades in different shapes have been tried, but so far it didn't prove to be very effective. Then to manage habitat and prey is very important. So to make the wind farm area less suitable for being used by birds. At specific situations to remove turbines that showed very high mortality rates, and then temporarily shut down turbines, which is the mitigation procedures I will talk about. So we have been working with the Barão de São João wind farm. It's a wind farm in southwest Portugal. It has 25 2-megawatt turbines. The tower height is 80 meters and the blade length is 45 meters, meaning that the maximum height the blades reach is quite high, it's 125 meters, which is a class of height which is very much used by many bird species. In this orange square here, you see it is just in the southwesternmost tip of the Iberian Peninsula, and this is one of the most important flyways for migratory birds, the Strait of Gibraltar between Europe and Africa. And every autumn, nearly 500,000 of soaring birds, so raptors and storks, are crossing from Europe to Africa in this flyway here. And as you can see, it's not that far away from our study site. It's just 300 kilometers away. So this is our study area, this wind farm. The other green circles are surrounding wind farms nearby. And what happens is that every autumn, a proportion of the birds that are crossing in Gibraltar just get lost and go southwest, where they shouldn't go. And so ultimately they end up in this tip of Portugal, and they realize that they cannot cross there to Africa. They don't see the African coast, and so they come back again. And they flew over the wind farm several times, and indeed the same birds can stay there for different days for more than a week because they are really lost. They are all juvenile individuals making the migration for the first time. So this means that the wind farm is crossed by the same birds at different occasions for many times. It's a lot of traffic, as you can imagine there. So the area is indeed very important as a migratory secondary route. And every year, every autumn, we count between 4,000 and 5,000 soaring birds there. Many of them are very threatened species. And as I said, because birds repeat movements over the wind farm, every autumn we count about 35,000 movements of soaring birds crossing over the wind farm. So it's, as I said, a lot of traffic. Anyway, there was an environmental permit to build the wind farm in this area, but it had very strong conditions to operate. So one is the thorough long-term monitoring programs that include all the migratory period from August to November every year. And then an exhaustive mitigation program, including this turbine shutdown on demand, which should be also applied during the whole operation phase, during the whole migratory period every year. So there are shutdowns, there are criteria to order the shutdown of turbines. They are the occurrence of intense migratory flow of soaring birds, the detection of migrating flocks, the detection of a very specific and short list of endangered species, 7 very endangered species, or the observation that there is an imminent risk of collision. Those are the criteria that you can use to order the shutdown of turbines. So the surveillance setup of the wind farm is we have 2 observers in vantage points inside the wind farm area, and plus a security perimeter of 5 other vantage points with observers around the wind farm, and we also use a radar. So I guess you can see from here, so the circles are the turbines, the red triangles are the vantage points with visual observers, and the blue triangle is the radar point. And this big circle here is you usually use a range of 8 kilometers around the radar, so it's the area surveilled by the radar. And as you can see, the radar is installed northeast of the wind farm because it's from this direction that most of the birds are coming from. So this is a very strategic place to put the radar. Well, we use radar because it has been proved that it increases quite much, at least 3 to 4 times more, but we think it's more, although it's very difficult to access the exact figure, the detection of the soaring birds compared to visual observation. It also allows us to detect birds further away and with poor visibility conditions or birds that are flying at higher altitudes. And ultimately, it allows us to have an earlier detection and tracking of birds that are approaching the wind farm, and this increases the probability of predicting their flight routes and of anticipating their behavior towards the wind farm. And this provides us with quality information in assessing the need to shut down or not the turbines in each occasion. So this was already shown at Daniel Scanbright's session this morning, but this is how it works. So we have these visual observation points surrounding the turbines. The green below the turbines means that they are operating, and we have a radar here. And then there is this threatening flock of griffon vultures coming near the wind farm. Usually it's the radar that detects them first, and with a simple mobile phone call, we ask the guys in the wind farm to shut down turbines, and then it's turning red because they are being shut down. So, the vultures will just cross over the wind farm very safely, and when the danger is gone, we can, with another mobile phone call, just ask them to put them on again. This is a very simple procedure. I will just very briefly show a video of what we get from the radar images. So this is our wind turbine. These yellow dots are turbines. This is a wind farm that we are studying. We have another wind farm there, and you will see yellow dots moving, leaving a blue track behind them. This will be birds, and I will show a very accelerated video of 35 minutes of a griffon vulture with 300 individuals. Well, this is the radar system, and this fosoftware, bird monitor software that we developed is tracking the birds with this yellow square that you will be following, that you will see following the birds. So hopefully, I was hoping that it would not take as long as it took when installing. I think it will take a bit to download. but I can describe what's happening from now. So you will see the birds coming from northeast, as I said, is mostly from there that they are coming. Okay, here they are. So this is in total 300 griffon vultures moving very close to the turbines now. By that time, we have already shut down the turbines because at least this part of the wind farm would be at risk of causing high collision rates for birds. So, and indeed, they are crossing the southernmost part of the wind farm. So it's good that we shut down those turbines, of course, otherwise they would have collided. And I hope this works better now. Yeah. And this is what happens. Well, it's moving not that well, but as you can see, well, there are just griffon vultures soaring very close to the wind turbines. Indeed, sometimes they perch on the turbines when they are shut down. So they really don't. Some people can say they are just stupid. Well, probably they just don't perceive these turbines as a danger because they are not adapted to see these obstacles in front of them. I should remind you that most raptors, and specifically vultures, they are just... It's a very windy situation, and we have 440 griffon vultures just all around all the turbines, as you can see. That all those small spots are griffon vultures. They're just flying very close to the turbine blades that have been shut down. And indeed, when it's very strong wind, it's even more difficult for them to maneuver. So if the turbines will be operating, the danger will be enormous, of course. So, about shutdown orders, who triggered all these shutdown orders? Considering the 2 years of operational phase, so 2010 and 2011, we can see that overall the visual observers at the security perimeter have quite an importance in detecting birds. But the radar itself detected over 1/3 of the bird that triggered a shutdown. But now if we consider only birds coming from northeast, and remember that the radar is placed really northeast, because it's from where most of the birds are coming from, the radar detected over half of the situations that triggered shutting down turbines. So it's a very important tool to use in these situations. Well, here you can see that all the criteria mostly were used to shut down turbines. Intense migratory flow and migrating flocks mostly, but also in 2011 we had many situations with the imperial eagle, black vulture and blackfilch, which are very endangered species that also constitute a criteria for shutting down. And this is very interesting. This represents the proportion of wind measurements at the steady period at the wind farm, and the proportion of the number of turbine shutdowns and of the total shutdown hours. And as you can see here, nearly 40% of turbine shutdowns and 50% of shutdown hours occurred with wind speeds lower than 5 meters per second, so corresponding thus to low electricity production periods. So the overall results of shutting down in these 2 years were, so we have decreased the number of shutdowns from one year to the other. The time until shutting down, it's really small. It's on average 4 minutes. So since the mobile phone order is given to turbine shutdown, it's only 4 minutes. Can be less or more. This is average. And the equivalent shutdown hours were about 80 hours or 100 for the whole period, for the whole year. And very importantly, we have zero mortality of soaring birds in these 2 years, in spite of all this traffic. So to conclude, mitigation procedures, including this visual and radar surveillance associated with turbine shutdown on demand, resulted in zero mortality of targeted soaring bird species, while we were observing mortality occurring of the same species in neighboring wind farms, very close. Losses less than 1% of equivalent hours, which means that there was a very low negative impact on energy production. And it allows us to reconcile wind energy exploitation and nature conservation is a very important migratory corridor for birds. So as final remarks, we think we are showing that turbine shutdown on demand may constitute an extremely efficient mitigation measure, at least in some situations, especially in areas where the importance of these areas for the birds changes temporarily and in a predictable way, like in migratory corridors. And well, shutdown operations should be highly flexible. In our case, it's dependent on expert judgment on the ground based on radar and visual information. Although in other situations, it would be wise to make it fully automatized. It's also possible. In our situation, it would not be advisable because the shutting down will be much more frequent. And so the application of shutdown on demand mitigation at the same time may lead to very satisfactory, meaning very small equivalent shutdown periods and very small losses in energy production. And of course, these mitigation procedures can be used also in offshore situations, depending on each case, of course. So I just want to thank all the STRIX collaborators that helped with field work, E.ON, which is the developer of this Barão de São João wind farm, and to all of you for your attention. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Sage. I'm supposed to introduce myself. And Jack and I have been colleagues in the past, and I think that you will agree that what I'm about to say is true. I'm very old. I've been around a long time, and I've worked a lot of places. That's it. That's what I have. At this point in the conference, for speaking for myself, I'm suffering from brain fatigue, which makes it very hard to absorb new information. And so I have good news for you. I don't plan to say anything worth remembering. I have some information sheets with a little data on the project that I'm going to be talking about. You might find that worth remembering. My presentation is made of 10 slides. I would ask you to only think about the first and the last. In between, I'm just going to show you pictures. And what do I do? Do I hit this? No. Okay, so first slide. I'm not yet really talking about the project. I'm talking about the condition. The project takes place in Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. The need is clear. It's a totally unsustainable dependency on imported oil. The response to that has begun in a very positive way with a multifaceted program for reduction of dependency. And the project that I'm talking about is one of those. Like all projects, it faces challenges. And the point of this chart really is to talk about risk. There was a great deal of risk in getting the financing together because it's an innovative application of the technology. And it's hard to get people to invest in innovation. The technology itself, although it has been around for a while, has not been used in this manner before. And so there were questions about would it work. Then there's always the question of political acceptance. In this case, it had a lot to do with the location of the onshore portion of the project. There were engineering challenges and risks. And there was perhaps a surprising, at least to me, amount of risk in terms of actually getting it permitted. And I'll give a little more detail on that. The reward for taking all this risk is that if it does work, more projects will occur with less risk. And there are a number of projects that are lined up right now, which will go forward if this project meets all these risk challenges. Okay, this is the picture part. And it's worth 1,000 of my words and more. So this is a picture of the project. Essentially what you're doing is you're pulling seawater from a deep source, about 5 miles offshore, about 1,700 feet down. You're pulling it up, and you're running it through a cooling station, and you're putting it into using an exchange, which I'll show you in a minute, cooling the fresh water with the cold seawater, putting it back into the air-conditioned buildings on Hawaii and Honolulu downtown. And then it will remove somewhere between 60 and 90 buildings from the power grid. Have all of the air conditioning being provided in this renewable manner, and then the water is pumped back out into the sea. So when you go inside the onshore facility, the building, that's what you see. You see the seawater coming in, it's green, it cools the fresh water in the heat exchange, it goes back out, and the cooled water goes into the building to support the air conditioning system. So from a sort of accurate depiction, the little red dot is where the cooling power plant, if you want to call it, is stationed. And then the green area are all building areas in downtown Honolulu that would be supported by this project. And another picture of the same thing, but it's an actual picture, not a graph. And it's the proposed route. So essentially what you have to do is some underground tunneling to get to the shoreline, and then you start dropping down the pipe into the water. And that's another depiction of it. It's essentially looking at the bathymetric profile of what's being done. And that's sort of a picture of what the pipe looks like as it goes out, and then it's weighted and sinks. This is, I believe, the key to the success of the project. I mentioned earlier that we had a significant amount of difficulty in permitting, and the way we worked our way through that was with extensive and continuing development of alternatives. That was the only way that you could accommodate all of the concerns raised by the public, by political officials, but most particularly by the regulatory agencies. The application of an innovative technology creates a reaction of, I would call it, technically is called cautionary principle. That often means I don't know what's going on, so I'm going to say it's an impact because I can't say it isn't. And so we had to continually work through that issue with the regulators. The alternative that was eventually chosen was the fourth one, the last one that we came up with. So you would call that the compromise alternative if you wish. But it did meet all of the concerns, and the permitting is now being done. Almost is done. You can't see that, but one of the things we're quite proud of is all of the white area is zero impact. All of the green area is plus impact, but it's actually beneficial. And we make a very strong point about that in our analysis. We don't let documents go out that do not have documentation for beneficial impacts. The idea that the only impact should be noted is that comes through mitigation, and a reduction of the negative to us is not sufficient. So we document beneficial impacts and try to express them as a totality of the project. Okay, so last slide. The other part about my presentation is that you're going to like because it's short. These are the things that I've been thinking about, and perhaps you will too. And it goes back to the concept of context. Speaking at least, I think, relatively accurately for the American society, it has become a very adversarial society. We tend to frame decisions as being between good guys and bad guys. We have, therefore, a very short radius of trust. The only people you trust are the group you're in, which by definition are the good guys, and the other group is by definition the bad guys. That leads to very high transaction costs, lots of contracts, lots of litigation on contracts, lots of delays of projects. And the problem, I think, for us in this profession is that we too often get identified as being nothing but a transaction cost. High cost, low value. Or there's a perception that the environmental assessment can be used as a tool to hit the other guy over the head with to support their contentions in litigation. So it's a difficult position to be in. But it is, I think, the one that we're in. I think that to be effective, we have to find a way to be seen as trustworthy by all sides. And that, to me, is not a matter of compromise, but it's a matter of clarity. And the point of an EA, environmental assessment, whatever nature you want to call it, is really making a significance decision. And as I've stated on the last chart, I think the best way to work that is through alternative development, which is a key. It becomes a mediation tool. It becomes a way to be seen as trustworthy about the statements of significance. And that's because it points to a solution. I believe that that should be the aim of it, and that if you don't achieve that, in this conference as many times I've heard about, do we have an effect on decision makers? Do they listen? Well, they won't listen if you only bring them problems. If you can identify solutions and put them forward in a manner that describes the process and the mediation that you created, then they will listen, or they'll be more likely to listen. That's it. Thank you very much. I have more pictures, but I don't know how to turn this off.
Well, we have about 10 minutes for questions. I found the projects really interesting, and ending with the wisdom of Paul Sage, he lived up to the meaning of his name. So are there questions for any of our presenters?
Just a point of clarification, can you explain what the bathymetric profile is? Sorry, I'm an ignorant social scientist.
Can you repeat the question loudly?
She wants to know if I know what a bathymetric profile is.
Okay.
And the answer is no. You'll see on the sheet, and perhaps I had it on the slides, that there's to be a co-presenter here. His name is George Krasnick. He ran the project. He actually knows, he could answer your question.
I think bathymetry is the same at the bottom of the ocean that topography is on the land.
Yes. Well, generically speaking,
I
yeah.
was being that ignorant, sorry.
Oh, well, yeah, see,
Egon Enarsson from Sweden. We have used this district cooling for many years, and I have never heard about any negative impacts. What was the negative impacts? What was the negative impacts? The possible.
The negative impacts? Well, one of them that stayed in the red all the way through, at least to the point of through construction, was noise. There was a great deal of concern about the noise. There is some concern about water quality. There is concern about entrapment, impingement. You're sucking in 40,000 gallons of water a minute through that pipe at 5 miles down, and little guys swimming around get hurt. When you're putting the water back in, and the layer you're putting it into is now, it's been heated, and does that have an effect on the flora and fauna at that level for mixing? There was a lot of concerns, mostly brought up by the regulators.
Last point for my question, temperature and extraction of water.
Yeah, my question is for the gentleman with the solar power presentation. It's a very interesting presentation because it shows a case of a solar facility where you could actually have something resembling a natural habitat inside of it. And I'm used to these images where it's less attractive to biodiversity than a parking lot. And so how would you characterize what kind of solar design permits low-growing natural vegetation? It wasn't clear, is this concentrated solar power or photovoltaic? Can this kind of design be used for both or one or the other? Or, because that seems to divide the solar technology into those that allow some biodiversity in their midst and those that don't.
Well, this is a photovoltaic power station. And I think the major difference between the first picture I showed and this one is actually the size of the panels, where the solar panels each unit is. Because there are other that rotate. There's another solar power station very close to this one, but already in the Spanish border within Spain. And it's much smaller. The structures are much smaller, so the distance between them is also much smaller, as the problem of shade is not as important. So what this company did, Ampere, is the national company and is part of Acciona, it's a Spanish company. What they did when they projected this was to make these big panels, and that makes the whole difference, I think. It's because you have to have quite a big distance, and you have these big alleys where you can have sheep or cattle or whatever. I don't think you can have cattle because cattle is too tall, but you can have sheep.
Thank you. I had a couple of clarifications. One from the gentleman who came after you, who was telling us that there's been 0 accidents of birds, those vultures, hitting the mills. So are there any government regulations which prohibit or which direct that the mills should be switched off? And are there independent people also taking a look at if the birds have been killed or not? So, and my second question is for the lady from Canada, and that is, well, we've heard as a layperson that it's very expensive to manufacture electricity from wind mills. So how do you sort of equate the power tariffs? And you said that you also go for profitability. Thank you.
If I may start. Yeah, so this the permit to install this wind farm there, after the environmental impact assessment identified this area as a very sensitive one, and that there could be significant impacts in terms of collision mortality if the wind farm was installed there. So then there was this negotiation phase with the Ministry of Environment and the developer, and the permit finally was allowed based on these strict rules. So they have to, the developer have to obey with this. And we that are doing the monitoring, we have to make daily reports to the Ministry of Environment. We can send them every week, but we have to make the daily reports telling whether we have shut down or not turbines, how many turbines, for how long, which were the criteria that triggered the shutdown, and if there was the criteria but we didn't order the shutdown, why didn't we? Because the birds were flying too high, for instance. So there is a monitoring of the application of this mitigation procedure. And we also do monitoring mortality prospection. And indeed, we find other smaller birds like passerines. They are killed by the wind turbines, but they are not criteria to shut down turbines. Only these more threatened soaring birds that are very sensitive there are a criteria for shutting down. Did I answer? Okay.
In Quebec, it's the government would decide to proceed with the bid-based process. This permit to have a more competitive price for the cost of the wind farm.
But for the consumer, electricity produced from hydro powered dam and from wind turbine, wouldn't the wind turbine one be more expensive, or it's put into the national grid and subsidized or something?
Yes, okay. Sure, it's more expensive to produce with the wind power, but it's a decision of the government, and it's a decision because to have the land blades
environmental degradation.
it's to help a region of Quebec. The government accept to have a higher price with the region.
Ricardo, how much did the radar system cost, and how much does it cost to implement the observation and radar compared to how much electricity costs for 1%? How much per bird is the question?
I was very much prepared to that question, but I cannot answer you. I mean, what I can tell is that it is a very small proportion of the profits, annual profits of the wind farm. And so the developer, before the developer decided to install the wind farm, we made an assessment. So we monitored the bird migration there. We made 3 scenarios of shutting down turbines, and based on this information, they decided that they could take the risk, that it was not very worthwhile. And what we can say that the number of hours that we have been shutting down turbines are far below even the most conservative scenarios, because it's working pretty well. So they are very happy with it.
I have a question about this migrating birds in Portugal, and that's because I'm dealing with a transboundary IAIA's according to the ESPO Convention. Do you know where these migrating birds coming from? Is there suppose Spanish birds, or is it coming from other countries, or have you notified those countries where the birds maybe come from?
That's a very interesting question, more at the ecological point of view. Well, but birds do, we have 37 species there every autumn of soaring birds. And some of these species and populations breed in the Iberian Peninsula, so mostly in Spain and Portugal. But we also get birds coming from Northern Europe, from Sweden, from Finland, etc. In fact, we have, well, not exactly. Yeah, well, that's true, but that's actually a parallel process. I didn't tell you about this, but there was this, the tip of this area, which does not have wind farms, has been monitored in the past by the BirdLife partner, especially in Portugal. And so it was found out that some birds were captured and breeding, etc. And some birds were coming from Finland, some kestrels, for instance. And we have been seeing also birds that have satellite transmitters, and that they are coming from Germany or Poland. And so there are many, the birds are coming from many, many different parts, because this is the Gibraltar Strait is the main western migratory corridor in Europe, in the western Palearctic, well, in Europe. So this is a proportion of birds that get lost. So all the birds from Northern Europe and Central and Western Europe are crossing Gibraltar. So we can get birds from many countries. Well, usually we contact people that are conducting research on these species when when we see wing marks, or when we have information on satellite transmitters to know where they are coming from, because this is also very interesting for us, of course.